All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we got to take a deep look into who our day 2 targets may be today. Rounds 2 and 3, we have a second round pick, 47th overall, and a third round pick 98th overall. And what are we going to do with that? Who are some of the players that we may be interested in? There was a recent report that Nakobe Dean may be one of them. We're definitely got to talk about that. Also, we got to talk about Jahan Dotson and the pick after doing some more research, watching some more film. Are we starting to warm up to it? We're going to talk about comps, advanced statistics, and a lot of thoughts, what other people are saying as well. And then lastly, we also got to talk about Terry McLaurin's contract talks. They've started. We got to talk about that a little bit at the end. And just to let y'all know, I will be live streaming rounds 2 and 3 tonight. I will also be live streaming at least round 4 on Saturday because we have 2 4th round picks now. So make sure y'all pull up tonight and tomorrow in the afternoon for the live streams. I will be analyzing every pick like I normally do, not just the Washington Commanders, because I like a lot of these players, watching film on so many of them. I love seeing where they end up going and whether or not I like their fit. So, I mean, Malik Willis is still out there. My guy George Pickens is out there. Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall. A lot of guys that I really like are still out there. Even just beyond my Georgia guys and Malik Willis, there's a lot of players from all around college football that are still available. So I'm going to be analyzing every pick, whether I like it or not and why. So make sure y'all pull up to all of that. And before we dive into this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure y'all become a channel member because I will be doing film sessions for every player we bring over the course of these next few days, even undrafted free agents. Even if I got to just do a film session on a highlight tape, I will. And so channel members are going to get all of those. The raw and edited versions where I'm just live reacting, very minimal editing, but I do want to get a couple of film sessions out of there that's for everybody that I will like organize and edit like I used to do. So make sure y'all go become a channel member so y'all can get all of the film sessions on every player we bring in, even like some free agents. If we go and sign Tyrann Mathieu after the draft, I'll do a film session on him. So make sure y'all stay tuned for all of that. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so first of all, we got to start with our day 2 plans just to let y'all know. As far as Friday and Saturday goes, we still have a second rounder, 47th overall, third rounder, 98th, 2 4th rounders, 1 13th and 1 20th, a 6th rounder, 189th, and 2 7th rounders, 230 and 240. We still don't have a 5th round pick, but we picked up an extra 4th. We didn't have a 3rd rounder. Now we do. That came with the trade back to get Jahan Dotson with the Saints. So, I mean, the rest of our draft is going to be fairly interesting. Martin Mayhew already said that the middle of this draft is going to be where all of the value is at as far as players go, and we still have various needs. So I think the trade back was pretty decent just overall, like the value we got, because you do want 2nd and 3rd round picks, and then we have 2 4ths. You do want that in a draft like this where you again can argue, you can debate whether it's the deepest draft in NFL history quality wise, but quantity wise for sure, with all of the guys that should have gone and came out into the draft last year due to the pandemic, stayed another year. So this is just literally the deepest draft pool in the NFL draft in NFL history. A lot of guys that should have gone probably in the 2nd round last year or even next year are going to go in the 3rd round this year, and some guys that would have went in the 1st last year or next year are going into the 2nd this year. So it's really good to have that type of value, to have those type of picks in the draft like this. But moving on, it's been reported by Grant Paulsen. He said now that he's heard from a couple of people around the NFL that the Commanders would like to draft Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean if he's there around 47. Problem is, highly doubt he's going to be there, but who knows? JOK from Notre Dame fell pretty far, and I feel like, to be completely honest, not being a homer, you know, I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan through and through, and I'm rooting for all of my guys. First of all, we set history. We are the first college football team to have 5 first-round players drafted ever in the history of college football. We had more players drafted than the entire ACC, than the entire Big 10 or the Big 12, one of those. So, I mean, I'm really proud of my guys, and we still have guys like Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall out there. There's so many Georgia Bulldogs still available. George Pickens. But yeah, man, I feel like Nakobe Dean is literally just smarter JOK. And JOK was a really good linebacker for the Browns last year. Everybody felt like he was one of the steals of the draft from how far he fell. He fell because he was small, just like Nakobe Dean. And again, he had a really good season other than injury when he was playing for the Browns. And I felt like Nakobe Dean is not only way less injury prone, but also he's a way smarter guy. He's a better leader. I mean, you literally can't miss with Nakobe Dean in the second round. Even though we already have Jamin Davis, I still feel like if Nakobe Dean, even if you trade up slightly to get him, that's a home run pick. And it's kind of crazy too, because entering the draft, if somebody told you we got Jahan, Dotson, and Nakobe Dean, you would assume we got Nakobe Dean with the 11th pick and Jahan Dotson with the 47th. But hey man, value is value. So we'll see how this goes. We end up with Nakobe Dean. I think that's a home run hitter. Again, we just drafted Jamin Davis in the first round last year, but like every team can use a Nakobe Dean. Now granted, you're gonna need a really good defensive line that can keep him clean. I feel like we have that. So I think Nakobe Dean would excel here for sure. Again, I don't think he makes it to 47, but him not running a 40 time and him just not really testing well at all. He just didn't show up prepared for some odd reason, or maybe he's just really not as athletic as everybody thinks. On film, he definitely looks like it to me as a Georgia Bulldog fan that's watched every game he's ever played just live, not even just film session wise. So, I mean, he looks really fast to me, but he just didn't test it. It's kind of probably the same thing as Treylon Burks or something, where he's way faster on film than he tested. I don't care, but I mean, he's coming with Hall of Fame leadership skills. He's literally going to be the smartest player in your defense. I mean, you can argue he's already smarter than Jack Del Rio. Jack Del Rio tells us to run some crazy coverage. Nakobe Dean assesses that, nah, this isn't going to work. He's the type of guy that has the confidence and the intelligence, the IQ, the instincts to do his own audible and say, forget what Jack Del Rio called in. We're going to do this. And then we do it and it works. So, I mean, that's just the type of guy you bring in. You bring in a future Hall of Famer, potentially. Not guaranteeing that it happens, but the potential is definitely there. We missed out on blue chip players like Jamison Williams, Kyle Hamilton, definitely in my opinion, when we traded back. Nakobe Dean, even though he's going in the second round at the earliest, he definitely has the blue chip player type of ceiling for sure. And it's not a lot of guys like that left in this draft, if any, outside of Nakobe Dean, honestly. Also, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I haven't heard any reports about it, but some people think that we may just double down on Penn State. We missed out on Micah Parsons last year, so we're going to take Jahan Dotson this year. I mean, of course, we also picked up Shaka Toney last year in the 7th round, but again, to make up for missing out on Micah Parsons, you take Shaka Toney in the 7th last year, you take Jahan Dotson in the 1st this year. Maybe you go and double down in this draft and go ahead and get safety Jaquan Brisker, who could basically be what we'd hope that we would get in Kyle Hamilton, that Buffalo nickel that can play free safety, strong safety, Buffalo nickel, all of that type of stuff, like a hybrid linebacker role. You know what I'm saying? So I think honestly, you could definitely say it's between Jalen Petrie, Jaquan Brisker, and Nakobe Dean, who are probably the best players we could possibly get in the 2nd round if they somehow make it there. But then, of course, as far as interest go and guys we've met with and we've shown interest in, who's still available going into this day 2 of the draft, you have running back Kenneth Walker, who we had a top 30 visit with, running back Breece Hall, who we had a top 30 visit with, running back Isaiah Spiller, who we had a combine meeting and a top 30 visit with, tight end Jelani Woods, who we had a pro day meeting, even though I think we'll pick him up with probably one of our 4ths. We'll see how that goes, maybe our 3rd. You have tackle guard Luke Jodike from Central Michigan. You have tackle Rasheed Walker. You have edge Logan Hall, edge Boye Mafe. You have defensive lineman Perry and Winfrey, defensive lineman Travis Jones. Of course, you definitely have linebacker Chad Muma from Wyoming from the combine meeting. You have linebacker Troy Anderson from Montana State with the combine meeting. And then, I mean, of course, I mean, a lot of people are low on Christian Harris from Alabama, but we did meet with them at the combine and bring him in for a top 30 visit. And speaking of Jaquan Brisker, we brought him in for a top 30 visit. You also have Nick Cross, who's a local guy from Maryland. We had a combine meeting with him and a pro day meeting. So we'll see how this goes, man. There's a lot of guys available. I mean, of course, everybody kind of has a different big board remaining, but I think overall everybody can kind of agree that the best players available. You could probably throw Chad Muma in there as well, especially as far as defense goes. You have Chad Muma, Troy Anderson, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Petrie, and of course my boy Nakobe Dean. And now going to Jahan Dotson. First of all, let's talk about some advanced stats first. First of all, Statistically, he has the best hands in the draft. He literally had the lowest drop rate out of all receivers in this entire class, and he ranked 4th in contested catch rate with 81.3%. I mean, his quarterback was terrible. So just like Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew said, he plays way bigger than his size. That's very true. I mean, first of all, he has the safest hands in the draft. I mean, you can debate best, but there's no contest when we say safest, because he literally had the lowest drop rate in college football out of all eligible draft receivers. And then again, he was also 4th in contested catch rate. He was also technically the best zone beater in the class with a 96th percentile success rate. And that's why Matt Harmon compares him to Doug Baldwin. And Doug Baldwin with the 16th pick, I think, is definitely a really good pick. If he ends up being the comps that people are comping him to, and with us acquiring a 2nd and a 3rd out of it, a 3rd and a 4th out of it, then that was a really good move. And to add to those statistics, he was 5th in yards per route run. He had 98 yards plus 1 touchdown per game, which ranked 2nd in the college football in market share. He was top 7 in separation rate with bottom 5 quarterback accuracy. And again, he had the lowest drop rate in the class. Moving on to comps, Martin Mayhew and Ron Rivera didn't necessarily compare him to Deshaun Jackson and Steve Smith, but they said that he plays bigger like those guys. I like the Doug Baldwin comp. I also like the Santana Moss comp potentially. I like that. Smaller guy, really polished, advanced route runner, very nuanced, very sure hands, and is very competitive in the air. And that's literally Santana Moss. There's also people saying that he's Tyler Lockett, and there's people saying that he's Emmanuel Sanders. Those are all really good comps. And I mean, at the 16th pick, especially since he's going to allow Terry McLaurin to see more one-on-ones, that's going to end up being a really good pick. Again, my whole reasoning behind why I didn't like the pick is because I wanted Jamison Williams and Kyle Hamilton. And granted, it's nice getting a 3rd and 4th round pick, but to miss out on a future Hall of Fame player potentially does suck. But at the same time, we still got a really good player. He's a really good player. I just think we could have traded back again and still got him. But it depends how far you trade back. And we're going to talk about that. But first of all, let's talk about his role. Again, speaking of Terry McLaurin, it's not like we drafted Jahan Dotson to be the #1 receiver. He's basically just going to be that guy. You know how we just never have a wide receiver 2 that even reaches like 300 yards receiving? It's basically just been Terry McLaurin and J.D. McKissick out there, with between guys getting hurt or underperforming. Terry McLaurin hasn't had a wide receiver 2. I mean, at times last year, it looked like DeAndre Carter was our wide receiver 2. And that's another interesting thing too, because he's basically better DeAndre Carter. He's going to come in and be our starting punt returner day 1, and so that adds value right there, of course. But I think his role, as far as how he fits on this team, I mean, some people even compared him to T.Y. Hilton as far as trying to give Carson Wentz something that he had for the Colts. We didn't get Michael Pittman and Drake London, so we got T.Y. Hilton and Jahan Dotson. I mean, that's really interesting. I think he plays bigger than T.Y. Hilton, but we'll see. But again, I mean, he's going to immediately come in and be the wide receiver 2. What we hope Curtis Samuel would be, what we hope De'Ami Brown would be when we drafted him. And I think De'Ami Brown and Curtis Samuel will still contribute, especially if Curtis Samuel's healthy. But I think Curtis Samuel is going to be more of a deep threat outside guy, whereas Jahan Dotson's going to be in the slot, and Curtis Samuel is going to, I'm not saying he's going to be Deebo Samuel, but I think we're going to use him in a similar way with a lot of stuff out of the backfield, because we even did it a little bit last year while he was banged up. So if he's fully healthy, they're definitely going to give him the ball out of the backfield a lot. And so I just think Jahan Dotson would immediately take over as like the starting slot receiver. At the very least, a better Jamison Crowder. You know, I think that's pretty good. If you compare everybody's stats and their speed, I mean, technically we did get a little bit faster because Jahan Dotson ran a 4.43, which is 0.01 faster than De'Ami Brown. But at the same time, Antonio Gibson, who's way bigger, ran a 4.39. Terry McLaurin, of course, ran a 4.35, and Curtis Samuel ran a 4.31. So Jahan Dotson is a deep threat. He's really fast on tape, but 40 time wise, he's not spectacular. But a 4.43 isn't bad. It's just with how small he is, you would hope that he ran in the 4.3s. But again, on tape, he's running past everybody. So I don't even really care about that 40 time, to be completely honest. And also, speaking of his height, I mean, if you remember, Pierre Garçon was 6 feet, Deshaun Jackson was 5'10", and Jamison Crowder was 5'9", and we made that work with Kirk Cousins. That was arguably the most explosive offense we've had in quite some time, for sure. And so you have Terry McLaurin, who's 6 feet, Curtis Samuel 5'11", and Jahan Dotson, who's 5'11". So we're even taller than the Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, and Jamison Crowder crew. So I know a lot of people are saying, like, I mean, just to have all of these small guys, but at the end of the day, these guys are bigger very slightly. It's very marginal, but they are technically taller and bigger than that Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, and Jamison Crowder receiving core that we had. You could pretty much say that Terry McLaurin is just faster, better Pierre Garçon. People are comparing Jahan Dotson to potentially being like the Deshaun Jackson, but in my opinion, I think he's the better Jamison Crowder. Then you had Curtis Samuel and De'Ami Brown to that with J.D. McKissick, Antonio Gibson, and hopefully Logan Thomas if he's healthy with John Bates. It's really just no excuse for Carson Wentz at this point, in my opinion. Now to some more thoughts on Jahan Dotson and the pick itself and who he is as a player. First of all, one thing I noticed is that the Commanders definitely have a type when it comes to receiver, because Drake London was their wide receiver 1. They would have taken him at 11 if the Falcons didn't take him at 8. I definitely believe that. And there's clearly a type, because what's different from the group of Drake London and Jahan Dotson from the guys like Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and a lot of the top receivers in this draft class is that Jahan Dotson and Drake London were literally the offense on their team. They had terrible quarterback play and no offensive weapons around them. Literally none. Teams knew coming into those games, defensive coordinators literally knew that the whole game plan was to get the ball to Drake London, was to get the ball to Jahan Dotson every game. And yet they still somehow went out there and produced the way they did. I mean, to put up the numbers that Jahan Dotson did under those circumstances, again, a terrible quarterback and no weapons outside of him, he's going to be so happy to be opposite of Terry McLaurin. Carson Wentz, say what you want to say about him, he's a huge upgrade over what he had in college. So if he could do what he did in college with those advanced stats I already told you about, I think, if anything, he's just going to end up being a really good receiver for us. Will he ever be Jameson Williams? Highly doubt it. But I do believe he will end up being a really good receiver. And again, I just want to reiterate, the Washington Commanders clearly had a type, because Chris Olave had Garrett Wilson and CJ Stroud. Jameson Williams had John Mechie and Bryce Young. And of course, Garrett Wilson had CJ Stroud and Chris Olave. And so it was really hard to focus on them and double team them because you had to worry about the other guy. And the quarterback was really good, mobile, can do things with his legs. So there was so much that you had to worry about outside of just Jameson. Again, I'm definitely not saying he's better than Jameson Williams, but you can make an argument that he may end up being the better receiver between him, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson. Not guaranteeing it, but you can see the argument. Again, Jameson Williams, my wide receiver 1 by far, so I'm definitely not saying he's better than him. But again, the Washington Commanders have a type. They want a receiver that can put the team on his back, because when you come here and you're used to putting the team on your back, playing next to Terry McLaurin, at the very least, everything is just going to be way easier for you than what you had to deal with in college. I don't care, even if the secondaries you're going against are better, corners are better, safeties are better. The overall situation is definitely a net positive for him for sure. Again, I mean, just overall, it's really interesting that we ended up taking that 11th pick, turning it into the 16th, 98th, and 120th, and still ended up with technically the best separator in the draft, and also arguably the safest hands. Really, the only problem you have with him is that he's small, and you're just not sure if he's going to be able to beat press man coverage. But I mean, first of all, you can protect him from that by primarily playing him in the slot, because he's really just not going to get press man there often. And then on top of that, I think he's quick enough to beat press man, even if he's not strong enough. And then also you can get him in the weight room and get him to add some weight. I don't think he'd lose much speed that way anyway. So I still stand firm with, it's technically a good pick. He's going to be a really good player for us. Very high floor player. Comes with a higher ceiling than what some people probably believe he has. But I still would have preferred to take Jameson Williams and Kyle Hamilton. Like I said in my video last night, if Jameson Williams and Kyle Hamilton didn't exist, then Jahan Dotson trading back and getting them at 16 is an excellent pick, because I prefer to get a 3rd and a 4th with Jahan Dotson over Chris Olave for sure. But I mean, it's just the fact that we missed out on Jameson Williams and Kyle Hamilton while they were there. But if those guys didn't exist, I'd be way higher on this pick. I just really wanted those 2 guys really bad. But again, if those guys didn't exist, I would consider this like an A pick, honestly. I just don't think trading back was worth missing out on those 2 blue chip players, in my opinion. But a lot of guys aren't even high on Kyle Hamilton. I am still, but it is what it is. Also, you got to note that, like, with us trading back to 16, and Martin Mayhew said that there were teams on the line that they could have traded back again. It just depends on where. Because if you really love Jahan Dotson, you got to take him. And like I said in my video last night, whether it be quarterback, any position, even though Malik Willis is my favorite quarterback, if they really just for some reason loved Matt Corral or Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, or any of those guys, and they took them, I would be behind it, because that clearly means that they love him to the point that they've done all of the research they can. They envision winning games with this guy, going to the playoffs, winning the division, and so they're going to do everything in their power to see that guy succeed. So I kind of feel the same way with Jahan Dotson, even though I prefer a couple of other receivers over him. I mean, I prefer to bank on the potential and the ceiling of like a George Pickens or a Christian Watson. Treylon Burks was even there. But like, with as much as this team loved Jahan Dotson, it makes me get behind it even more, because they clearly have a vision for him. They didn't just take him because like, oh, we have a needed receiver, we might as well. They had a chance to trade back again, and they were like, nah, we're taking him. We're not even chancing it, which takes me to the point that I don't think Jahan Dotson makes it past the Packers or the Cowboys. Definitely not the Packers. So I think you just had to do what you kind of had to do right there. I would have liked to have traded back again, but I don't think you would have ended up getting Jahan Dotson at that point. And clearly they really love this guy. And overall, I just think that, I mean, anytime there's any trade in the NFL like that, everybody thinks they're getting up on the other person. Like, they think the other team is just stupid. Like, the Saints probably think we're just stupid for allowing them to move up and take Chris Olave. And I'm pretty sure we think they're stupid because Jahan Dotson may end up being better than Chris Olave, and we got a third and a fourth rounder out of it. So I think that's just a funny dynamic. Anytime there's trades like that, the other team is like, man, y'all are tripping. I don't know why y'all are giving us this for that. But hey, it is what it is. So I always think that's pretty funny. But yeah, man, I think, I'm not saying it's a guarantee again, but you know, if Jahan Dotson ends up being better than Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, especially with the situations they went to, don't be surprised. Again, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson haven't had to put an entire offense on their back like Jahan Dotson did. So we'll see how this goes at the next level, man. I mean, how bad the quarterback was and how he had to do, but not just crazy contested catches and how great his hands were, but even the way he had to contort his body to make some of those catches was just crazy. That man was going through it on a weekly basis. Just everybody around him was so bad, and he still found a way to shine. So that's probably my favorite thing about him, literally being an offense carrier. I mean, offense completely on his back. Penn State is not scoring points without Jahan Dotson out there balling out. And again, defensive coordinators knew that was the Penn State game plan every game, and he still found a way to produce. And then one front office exec said about Jahan Dotson, quote, easy, effortless mover who won't always feel explosively fast when watching, unquote. Another NFL exec, and none of these people have anything to do with the Commanders, no connections at all, said that he loves his twitch, his hands, ball skills, and things he can separate. Worries about his size and that he plays small. Graded him as a slot receiver and value option more than an outside guy that Washington projects. And I think Washington does view him as a guy just like Terry McLaurin. There's going to be outside, inside, XYZ, everything. Deep, field threat, slants, running every route on the route tree. I think they basically see him as Terry McLaurin 2.0. And if you think about it, he was drafted way higher than Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin was drafted to come here to basically be a gunner, to be a special teams guy that can also block. Now, that's one thing Jahan Dotson doesn't do well. He doesn't block well. I mean, in the run game, you have to run it away from him. Whereas Terry McLaurin, you can run it towards his side. So, I mean, that's one big difference. But basically, Washington sees him as another Terry McLaurin that can play anywhere on the field, run any route, and do anything that you need him to do. And so, I mean, I think that's really interesting. I think he'll be best in the slot, especially early on until he learns how to beat press man more consistently. But I just think that's really cool that they view him so highly. Again, just like quarterbacks, any position group, even if I personally, as Street Scores, Rico, prefer a different player at that same position group, if the Washington Commanders love a guy that much, I have no choice but to get behind it and give him the benefit of the doubt, because they've earned it in a couple of position groups. Not all of them, but a couple of them. And then also, Jahan Dotson had a press conference today, and he spoke about various things, and I liked the interview a lot. I'm not gonna lie. First of all, he's literally Terry McLaurin, the way he speaks. Like, I mean, Terry McLaurin's from Indiana, this guy's from New Jersey, but they both have that media trained, no accent apparent, just a black guy. Like, you can't tell where they're from based on how they sound when they talk. It's literally Terry McLaurin. He knows how to answer all of the questions correctly. And Ron Rivera alluded to that. Like, when we took Jahan Dotson, the reporters literally asked him, like, you interviewed all of these guys way more than Jahan Dotson. What made you go with him even though you barely talked to him? And basically Ron Rivera said, like, once you talk to a guy once and he answers every question for him, you don't need to talk to that guy over and over again. We brought in guys for top 30 visits and guys that we had to talk to more often, like more than once, because we had questions for them that needed to be answered. Whereas Jahan Dotson, they felt like they talked to him once and they're like, oh yeah, we're sold. We don't need to bring you in for a visit, nothing. We already know we really like you. You're high on our board. And so I definitely see the comparisons with Terry right there, because he basically just interviewed well. He talks very well, as you can see at his press conference. I mean, it's literally Terry McLaurin talking. If you weren't looking at your screen, wherever you're watching it, your phone, your computer, your TV, you would literally think that was Terry McLaurin up there talking. It's crazy. Also, he revealed that he will be wearing jersey number 1. I like that. First of all, it's replacing DeAndre Carter, but also he's the first Washington Commander pick ever in franchise history. Literally the first, which is pretty historical. And he even addressed that. He said it's cool to have that number on my back, and the fact that he is the first Washington Commander pick ever. Also, I mean, remember, even on this picture, he has on his number 5 that he wore at Penn State. So that's really cool that he's moving to number 1, which is what DeAndre Carter had. He went to the Chargers because Tress Way gets to keep his number 5. And I like Tress Way as number 5, so I'm happy that Jahan Dotson made that decision. I'm pretty sure he didn't have Tress Way in mind when he did it, but that works out for everybody. Also, Jahan Dotson said that he was a Cowboys fan, but he's going to really enjoy facing them because he's going to go against his former Penn State teammate Micah Parsons. He said, quote, it's going to be amazing to play them twice a year and beat them twice a year, unquote. And that does have to be fun to go against your favorite team growing up, to really show them like you should have traded up and got me type of thing. So that's a little bit of chip on the shoulder. Not the same chip on the shoulder that Jameson Williams has being drafted after the other Ohio State guys. Remember, he came out from Alabama, but he used to be on Ohio State and he left to go to Alabama to get more playing time, which is a crazy sentence. Anybody, no matter what position group, leaving Ohio State to go to Alabama to get more playing time. And I mean, the fact that he was drafted after those two guys just because of his ACL, I'm pretty sure he has a chip on his shoulder. And I feel sorry for anybody that's in the NFC North. They're lucky that Jared Goff is the quarterback right now, because Jameson Williams is about to kill everybody. I think he's literally a future Hall of Famer. But going back to Jahan Dotson, he said he would have to do 10 push-ups every time he dropped the pass when he would play football with his cousins. It's something he keeps in the back of his mind. He got tired of it real quick, and it's one of the reasons why he excels at contested catches. So that's why he doesn't drop. He had the lowest drop rate out of all draft eligible receivers in this draft. So that's really cool. And it is also really funny too. Josh Taylor pointed it out that Ron Rivera lights up every time he sees Dotson. Like, he's super ecstatic about us getting him. Every time you see Ron Rivera and Jahan Dotson in the same picture, in the same video, Ron Rivera is smiling from ear to ear, man. It's hilarious. And then lastly, before we go, John Com reported, and Ron Rivera said it in his press conference, that they have started negotiations with Terry McLaurin. He didn't specify how far they are along with it. And I mean, honestly, I like Terry McLaurin more than AJ Brown, but I can see why a lot of people like AJ Brown more than Terry McLaurin. And now that AJ Brown's over there getting $25 million a year, Terry McLaurin's probably gonna get something somewhere similar to that, or maybe even a little less, but definitely more than Christian Kirk for sure. Definitely got to pay Terry McLaurin more than Christian Kirk. But yeah, that is really interesting that they went ahead and started negotiations with them. They said it would be somewhere around the draft, so I'm not surprised. And hopefully it gets done before training camp. Pay the man. 25 mil a year, somewhere around there, 23 to 25. I'm cool with it. Figure it out. And hopefully we have enough cap space after the draft. If we don't address certain positions of need, we bring guys back. If you don't end up getting a Buffalo nickel, try to bring back Landon Collins on a very cheap deal. If you don't end up getting a really good potential guard, bring back Eric Flowers for very cheap. You know what I'm saying? If those guys are still out there, go get them. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please definitely let me know what your predictions are for this next day, as in Friday, as far as the draft goes, rounds 2 and 3. Do you think we're going to make more trades? Do you think we'll trade up to get a guy like Nakobe Dean? Do you think we'll trade back to get more picks? Not sure, but I think if Nakobe Dean slides to a certain point where at 47, he makes it to like 42, I wouldn't be surprised if we trade up, because you don't even want to risk it, bro. Again, he's probably the last player available in this draft that you can honestly say with a straight face has Hall of Fame potential. I mean, you never know. There's a lot of guys like Jaquan Brisker has a high ceiling. Christian Watson at receiver has a high ceiling. George Pickens. A lot of people love Jalen Petrie, Chad Boomer. There's a lot of guys here that could potentially be Pro Bowlers, All Pros and everything. But if you had to put them in order of who has the best opportunity, who has the most talent, the highest ceiling or whatever, and you got to include floor in there as well, Nakobe Dean is probably #1 on most people's list. So if he slides to a certain point, I think you got to go ahead and get him, even after you just took Jamin Davis. And again, it's been reported that we don't care that we just took Jamin Davis. We're interested in Nakobe Dean, so I hope we end up getting him. I would love to get another Georgia Bulldog on this team because we rarely get them, so that would make me happy in itself. But yeah, man, definitely get in the comment section. Let me know your predictions for tonight's draft, rounds 2 and 3, Friday. Again, I will be live streaming. And also, man, please like this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. Jahan, Dotson film session on the way soon. And again, I will be doing film sessions on every player we bring in, even undrafted free agents, even if I have to go pull up a highlight tape and react to that. So, man, I appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later tonight. I'm out.